breaking down Breaking Bad. Let's get right into it and not waste any time. Episode 10 of Season 5, Buried. I was expecting something a lot more epic, like some character literally getting buried alive or something, but that would have been too over the top, and I wasn't really expecting that. I don't know, that was just a joke. Anyway, and the bad one obviously didn't really deliver that or get that across in the right way, but there you go. I'm going to leave it in. We're 30 seconds in, I haven't started talking about it yet. Okay, let's just get straight to it. I've already said that. I'm wasting time. Okay, here we go. Episode 10, Season 5. Episode 9 was just amazing. Such a great return for the show. The big question was, are they going to keep that momentum going? Are they going to keep the same level of awesomeness, basically? Because it was a lot to live up to, I feel like. And I think they did. Of course, it gets to a point where there's only so many kind of shock moments that you can get in the series. Hank finding out was one of them. Hank and Walt having the confrontation was another one of them. And in this episode we didn't get anything like that, but that's okay. For me, Breaking Bad's always been a show that every episode, even the ones that haven't got a lot going on in terms of like a big kind of twist or a big storyline point, there's always something good in those episodes. It just never feels like there's filler in Breaking Bad to me, and this didn't feel like filler at all either. It opens with the cold open, was this old man getting out to his car early in the morning, still dark, and he gets into his Jeep and he turns the lights on, and he sees something in his driveway. Comes around and he picks up a big massive wad of cash. Now we were reminded in the previously on Breaking Bad, the scene from last week where Jesse was throwing his millions of dollars all over the streets. So this old man picks up this massive wad of cash and he checks to see if it's real, and then he finds another one and another one, and he's just got this massive wad of cash. And I was just watching thinking, like, take the money and run, take the money and run. And then he sort of sees this kind of flickering light down by this park, goes down and the car's there and it's Jesse's car. Doors open, the old man goes up and there's all these millions in this big duffel bag. He then spots Jesse lying down on a kind of not a merry-go-round, but what do you call those things? You know, like a spinning child's playground thing. There's a word for it, it's just slipped my mind. Not a merry-go-round, but maybe it is, I don't know. That's the fairground ride, isn't it? There is a word for it, I'm sure there is, because I've used it, because I used to play on them when I was a kid. He's just kind of lying on it vacantly, just spinning himself around half-assed with his foot. And there's a kind of real cool shot looking down on him as he spins around, and that's the opening. Immediately it's like, oh my god, stupid son of a bitch, he's going to get caught with all this money, not good. And then after the title, the title screen, we go straight back to the end of last week's episode with Walt leaving Hank's garage, very tense. He turns around, Hank's there to kind of look back at him, and they just have a bit of a stare down. And the shooting, the directing was very much reminiscent of a western to me. I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but there was kind of the kind of point of view shot of kind of the gun hand of Hank, and then the same with Walt, and then like a kind of low angle looking up at what was like a western. It was awesome. Maybe hinting at some kind of, you know, classic showdown between the two, maybe later on in the series. Who knows? Walt quickly starts driving off, but then he kind of comes to his senses and starts trying to get hold of Skylar. But of course Hank's already on the phone to her, and so Walt rushes back to the car wash, tries to find her, but she's gone, and it's like, oh god, and it gets really tense. And then we see that she's been called by Hank to meet her in this this diner, and it's it's a bit awkward when she kind of turns up and he's like, you know, and it's like, wow, what's going to go on here? How is this going to go? And so it seems as though Hank kind of has maybe underestimated how involved Skylar is, and hints that, you know, he thinks that Walt's been abusing her and all this kind of thing, and it dates back to when she walked into the swimming pool that one time, and he sees all the pieces fit together in his own mind now. She doesn't say anything, and he's talking about how he wants to bring Walt down. He brings out a tape recorder. He's like, we're going to have him in jail by the time the sun goes down. Then she starts to kind of withdraw a little, and she's very emotional in the scene without really saying anything. And as soon as he puts the tape recorder down, she's like, you know, do we have to do this now? And he's like, well, yeah, why not? And then when she kind of backs off a bit, it's actually kind of funny when he's like, oh, well, no, I didn't think now. It's just a really laugh out loud little moment from Hank there, and it's a really tense scene. But it didn't ruin it, you know, that's one the beauty of Breaking Bad. And then, you know, she said, are you gonna arrest me? And he's like, what are you talking about? And then she stands up, she starts shouting at him, almost a bit like the shut up scene earlier on in season 5 with Skylar and Marie. And then she storms off, and she's very upset. Great acting by Anna Gunn in that scene, and Dean Norris as well. He just been so stand out in season 5, in my opinion. Not that he wasn't great in like 3 and 4, but because I think his character developed from season 1, season 2, and then season 3 he started to become more of a fully formed, multifaceted character, for me anyway. And then just by the time you get to 4 and 5, Dean Norris could just go all out and just give a great acting performance. Anyway, yeah, so what happens next? I've got like the plot synopsis so I remember everything. We see Walt, and he's with Saul Goodman. A really funny scene, which is it's kind of tense, but there's just this funny energy about it, because Walt's there and he doesn't know what to do because Skylar's gone to Hank and he's really pissed off. And you know, Saul's like, don't answer the phone to her, and she's trying to call him. He's like, you know, Hank's going to tap the phone and everything. And Walt's like, well, what do I do? And Saul says, well, do you ever consider, you know, maybe sending Hank to Belize? And Walt's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you know, same thing happened to Mike when you sent him off to Belize. And Walt's like, are you kidding? Hank's family. It's just like, but when you think about it from Saul Goodman's point of view, you know, of all the things that Walt has done, why not suggest killing Hank? I mean, really, at this point, all bets are off, you know. And Walt says, you know, says, send him to Belize, I'll send you to Belize, which is a line that everyone is kind of citing as a, you know, classic line now, or, you know, future classic line, best line of the episode. It was funny. And then we see the two of Saul's kind of associates, kind of stooges, lackeys, Huel and what's the other guy's name? Oh, it's played by Bill Burr, but Kuby, K-U-B-Y. I don't think I've ever heard the character's name, but he's the one who he convinced the original owner of the car wash that you know, to sell it to Skylar for a certain amount of money. Him and Huel were kind of house sitting Ted Beneke, and they go to where all the money is hidden. You know, Walt's money, the massive stack of money that Skylar said there's no earthly way to calculate how much money there is here. Huel just looks at the big black guy and he just goes, screw it, I'm going to do it. Just lies down on the on the money. And the other guy's like, what are you doing? You know, and then he says, oh hell, screw it, and he lies down on it as well. It's a really funny scene. It's like, oh yeah, he says, I've forgotten now. Not Huel, the other one, the ginger guy, he made some kind of Scrooge McDuck reference. I can't remember what it was, but it made me laugh. I found it funny. So they retrieve the money so that, you know, Hank can't find it, and they bring it to Walt at Saul Goodman's, and they've got it in 6 big kind of barrels, not unlike the ones that many bodies have been disposed of over the course of the 5 seasons. And Walt decides to take all that money out into the desert and bury it. And immediately I'm thinking, what a stupid son. I mean, Huel and the other guy, they even say, you know, hey, we'll help you out. And he's like, no, I'll do it by myself. So he goes out to the desert, and this is it's kind of cool because it's going back to where it all started. You know, that when the first shot of the show, when the RV is driving down that path and they're out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and he starts to dig. I just think there's no way he's gonna be able to dig that many holes, you know. And then we cut back. Skylar's at home. Well, maybe I'm kind of skipping ahead a little, you know, not getting the thing chronologically right, but you know, it doesn't really matter, I guess. Skylar's at home, and Marie turns up and she wants to speak to her. Hank's outside, and Skylar's like, okay, only if it's you coming in. So Marie and Skylar have this kind of, well, Marie has this scene on the bed when Skylar's kind of just crying the whole time, where she's kind of trying to figure out if it's true and asking Skylar, you know, if it, you know, how far back have you known this? And the longer she kind of retraces it back, and the longer that Skylar doesn't refute anything, she gets more and more upset, to the point where she says, you know, did you know before Hank got, you know, shot by those twins? And that's when she slaps Skylar in the face. And me and Connie, my fiance, we were watching this, and Connie pointed out, you know, maybe she's got a wire on, which I thought was probably going to be how the scene was going as well, because soon as Skylar wasn't saying anything, maybe she'd see the wire or something, I don't know. But it didn't turn out to be that way. Marie slapped her, she walked out, and Skylar's kind of just an emotional wreck. And then we hear that Marie is trying to take Holly, the baby. Skylar gets up there, and I'm thinking, oh my god, what has she done? And of course Skylar just stops her from, you know, taking the baby, and I'm thinking, you know, Marie, you can't steal everything. So Hank comes in, he has to intervene because, you know, they're just having this shouting match and she wants her baby back, and Marie's like, there's no way I'm leaving this baby with you, and all this kind of stuff. Eventually Hank convinces Marie to give the baby back and they leave. And then Marie and Hank are in the car. Marie says, you've got to get him. And it was like, ooh, you know, this is getting real serious now. By the way, something I wanted to mention. I remember a few months ago there was a picture released of season 5, and it was Hank, Marie, Walt and Skylar, and they were sitting down. I think it was at a bowling alley. Maybe it's just a conjecture in my own head, or projection in my own head, because last week there was a scene where they were talking about going bowling together. But I'm sure it was at a bowling alley or some kind of bar, and it looked like a kind of they were sitting there. But nothing seemed that, you know, amiss. I'm thinking maybe there was a bowling scene and they just cut that out, like in the episode 9, you know, maybe when Hank was still trying to figure Walt out and it was tense. I don't know. Maybe we'll see them. I just can't see them at this point getting together for a kind of night out, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I don't know. That was just something I wanted to throw out there because I remember seeing that a few months ago and being intrigued to see where it was going to go. And that would have been, you know, not that they should have given it away, but it would have been really great if that line that Marie said, you know, you've got to get him. That's a great kind of teaser tagline right there. But I understand why they didn't use it. And that's great as well. They gave away nothing. You know, that you see these Hollywood trailers now. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but they just give away so much. You know. Yeah. So you know, trailers and just kind of the kind of hyped up to things like big shows and TV and films. They sometimes give away too much. So again, I'm really just glad that nothing was spoiled for this. But again, I'd still, you know, say that is a really good trailer line. And in fact, there's a guy, again I'm going completely off track here, but there's a guy who made an amazing Breaking Bad tribute video set to the Ecstasy of Gold. Unfortunately, it's a kind of remix of the Ecstasy of Gold, which for me, you can't remix that song. And it was a great retrospective of seasons 1 through 4, and then he added to it later on and did season 5, and that season 5 section actually had the original Ecstasy of Gold, which was actually kind of cool. And apparently he's going to complete it this year, and I think that is definitely going to be one of the key lines that will be used. You know, you've got to get him. So I'll talk about this one actually. Yeah, Lydia resurfaces, and she's been taken out to the desert to meet with Declan, the guy who said, "You're Heisenberg." Goddamn right, that guy. Who's kind of taking over the meth and producing it, and Lydia is demanding to see where they make the meth because she's losing like $50 million or something like that, and the Czechs aren't happy with it, the Czech Republic connections that she has. So they show her this little kind of, at first I thought it was a bunker underneath this pickup truck, but it was just a bus literally under the desert. It's this dingy little place, you know. It was pretty much like the RV, and she wasn't happy with it. And you know, she said, "Bring Todd back." You know, Walt showed him his way of doing things, and Declan's like, "Well, you know, Todd's, you know, he did good the first 2 cooks, the 3rd cook, and he nearly set the whole place on fire. I don't trust him. I'm not going to use him. End of story." And then they're like, "Hey, we've got a situation up here." Declan goes up with the other guy who's cooking the meth, and I didn't even notice this. Connie clocked it. Lydia, she's on her phone. She does something and then she turns her phone off, and she gets down and she goes like this, and that's when we start hearing gunfire and stuff. Hatch opens after a while and it's Todd, and he says, "Hey, you can come up now," and she doesn't want to see it. She covers her eyes, there's bodies everywhere. All of Declan's guys have been killed, and it was almost a bit over the top. The body count, there's like about 15 bodies everywhere, and the guys who took them out were Todd and I think his uncle, the guy who kind of organised the prison murders at the end of season 5A. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. Are they going to get involved in the meth business? Are they going to be major antagonists moving forward? I don't know. Obviously Lydia, her story is not done yet, so that's interesting to see where that goes. Walt's in the desert. It's night time now, and he's just like, you know, his mouth is dry. He's got his shirt wrapped around his head, almost reminiscent of that episode where they were out in the desert or out in the, you know, in the middle of nowhere in the RV cooking, and he's dug this huge hole, almost unrealistically so, but you know, artistic license, and he puts all the barrels of money in and he buries it and kind of, you know, puts roots in stuff so it's, you know, there's no way no one could see it's buried there, and then he gets the GPS number and he memorizes it, smashes the GPS up, and I think he had some kind of random piece of paper that he put onto the fridge door, like a lottery number or something that had the coordinates on it. So he's home, Skylar wakes up and they meet for the first time since the events of that day. A great scene where he doesn't say anything, he just walks into the bathroom and he's kind of just knackered, taking off his clothes, and she's like, I didn't tell Hank anything. And she's like, you know, you got to believe me. And she's like, seriously, you got to believe me. And then he falls over and smashes his face, and then he's knocked out. You know, in the morning he wakes up and he's kind of still where he fell in the bathroom, and she's put a quilt over him, she's got a flannel on his head, and she's there and she's, you know, she's tending to her husband, and very uncharacteristic of Skylar's relationship with Walt at the, you know, at this point. And when he wakes up, you know, she says that although no, I think he says first that he says, I've got to turn myself in. It was a great scene, by the way, fantastic scene from both, particularly Bryan Cranston, because he's kind of really out of it, and it reminded me of the scene he did with Walter Jr. in season 4, when he called him Jesse. Brilliant kind of, you know, scene, played very well, and this was quite similar. Really, really good scene, where Walt says basically he'll give himself in, he'll turn himself in, just as long as Skylar promises that she doesn't give the money away, she doesn't say anything about it, and she keeps the money, and it goes on to their kids, and you know, because he doesn't want it all to have been for nothing, all the things that he's done. And that's where we see just that kind of sliver, that tiny little portion of Walter White that's still behind the face of Heisenberg. It was a really cool scene, and she turned around and said, we gotta fight this. You know? And I was thinking, just as he walked in, you know, you'd expect her to fly off the handle, and I thought, what if it's like a mirror of the scene with Hank and Marie, and Skylar's like, you gotta get Hank, you know. It wasn't that far, obviously, she didn't take it that far, but you know, she did stick by Walter, and, or at least for the good of her family, decided that they need to keep quiet, because Hank hasn't got any evidence, and unless, you know, Skylar kind of admits things and stuff like that, and then he needs evidence, obviously. We see him kind of poring over the evidence, and Marie's like, you know, you got to take this to the DEA, and he's like, well, I can't, because the day I walk into there and say the guy I've been looking for a year was my brother-in-law, my career's over, that's it. You know, what a joke, basically. So he has to go in with evidence, not suspicion. So he goes back to work, and he's, you know, kind of a bit uptight and stuff, and we see that Jesse has been apprehended and pulled in, and we get the two kind of cops who interrogated him in season 4, I believe, the whole ricin rock poisoning storyline, and Jesse's just completely just comatose almost, you know, just not saying anything. They leave, and Hank turns up and he says, hey, why don't you go, you know, go for a smoke break, and I'll just go and talk to him. There's another investigation going on. Maybe I can kind of antagonize him a bit. He hates my guts, you know. I'll fire him up a bit, and then you can come back in and get what you need to nail him. So they're like, oh, okay then. So they leave, and then, you know, we kind of see a shot of Jesse, and then it kind of, the focus changes, and there's Hank looking at him. Jesse hasn't seen him at this point, and then he walks into the room, shuts the door, and then credits. Everyone's talking about how, like, you can't end it there, you can't end it there, how could they do this? I wasn't paying attention to the time when I thought we were going to get that scene. It's really cool, because for me, if you look at it on paper, it's not really like, oh wow, massive cliffhanger, but it was a really good one, really effective, and just real simple. You know, it wasn't like you know, like Run, you know, like that cliffhanger. It wasn't anything really big and fancy, but it was definitely simple, to the point, and effective, and you've got to tune in next week to see that confrontation. And you've got to expect the first thing we're going to see is Hank turning off that video camera. But who knows, maybe he'll try and get Jesse on his side. I mean, there's so many different ways it could go. Again, all bets are off at this point. I think there's anything else I want to mention. You know, there's always little kind of Easter eggs and stuff, and cool little tidbits that, you know, you pick up on after multiple viewings. Last week I saw the episode twice, I've only seen it once this week. But yeah, for me, just kind of almost going back to the scene of the crime when Walt goes out to the desert was very cool. For me, the way he kind of, the whole story started where we saw his story start, and then at the end of the run almost, he's burying all the millions of dollars, and all his money that he's accumulated. Will he go back to making meth? I don't think so. I think it's past that now. But we're gonna have to see where it's gonna go with the checks and Lydia and Todd. You know, interesting stuff. I'm sure Todd's gonna bite the dust at some point in this season. That's pretty much a given, I think. But yeah, amazing episode again. Slower, not as many, you know, huge moments, but really good intimate character moments. Well, not so much intimate, but, you know, strong. You know, like Marie and Skylar's scene was great. Walt and Skylar's scene was great. And again, moments of humour. You know, the scene with Huel lying on the money was fantastic. You know, Hank's little, you don't have to say anything right now. I don't know if that was meant to be funny, you know, but I found it funny. And, you know, I'll send you to police. You know, it's in a show that's so dark, and Vince Gilligan, the creator of the show, says it all the time, you've got to lighten it up with some humour, otherwise it'd just be such a kind of a drag, you know, in terms of all the dark stuff. If you're a fan of Breaking Bad, I highly recommend that you Google Breaking Bad Insider Podcast. You can go to the AMC's website, amctv.com, and they have podcasts for every single episode of the show, featuring you know, editors, writers, producers, directors, Vince Gilligan, you know, sometimes actors, Bryan Cranston. And last week there was a podcast for episode 509, Blood Money. Bryan Cranston, who directed that episode, by the way, I did not know that last week when I reviewed the episode, and if I'd known, I would have said, damn, Bryan Cranston, as if he wasn't fucking talented enough. He had to throw that down our throats as well. It's like, yeah, not only was I amazing in that episode, I fucking directed it too. Brilliant stuff. Because that was a really, you know, a very visual episode as well. You know, Bryan Cranston is obviously very good with direction, and you can tell that as well from the podcast from last week, the way he was talking about certain things, and the line "Hello, Carol" when in the cold open from last week was not in the script, so that was cool. She didn't have a name, the neighbour. And yeah, I think maybe next week I could listen to it now, or I could have listened to it before I did this video, but next week, if there's any interesting trivia from this week's episode, Buried, then I'll talk about it next week. I'll give you a few from last week, if you haven't got the time to listen to all these podcasts, because they are like over an hour long. In episode 509, when the cold open starts, and we see the White House, the White family residence in a state of disarray. Originally in the script, the house was gone. Like, it wasn't even there. Like, it had been just completely it was just obliterated. But obviously they couldn't do that because it's an actual house, people live there, and it would have had to have been a CG job, and obviously they didn't want to really do that. One, it would be expensive, two, it may not look very good, you know, all those kind of problems, so they didn't do that. There was a big thing where they might have had to have taken the swimming pool out because they weren't sure if they could have people skateboarding in it. But the main thing, the kicker for me, this piece of trivia, is that when they wrote that Walt goes back to find the ricin, they had no idea what Walt was going to do with the ricin. There was no master plan. And the same could be said of the M60 rifle, that the machine gun that he picks up in episode 501. They didn't know what he was doing with that gun when they first wrote that into the show. I think that's brilliant. That's just fly by the seat of your pants writing right there. Awesome. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, stick around. I'll be doing another review next week. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode of Breaking Bad in the comments. Give this video a like if you liked it. Give it a dislike if you disliked it. But leave a comment above all else. I love the comments. Thank you for watching, and tread lightly.
Yes, it's cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause